Oh, shit. That's uncontrolled. I can't control it. Where is it?
Yo, welcome back. We're going to try to get through another video here. I'm Jay, your host. This is another Jet Noise Huge Motors video. We're going to try to get through the skills video or difficulty level needed after the thrust vectoring video. This is going to be our first like intermediate or semi-advanced kind of course. Got some stuff out here trying to explain channels, different tracks, and the difficulties and differences between normal cars and what we got going on here. So first of all, just a little layout of the J2 and how the throttle works. All right, basically, maybe we should start at the beginning. So the beginning would be more so a normal 2-channel setup. Your finger at the bottom there is just going to control forward and reverse, and then your steering wheel there is just going to make you turn left and right. And here it's just the wheels go forward or reverse, and it's left and right. And the prop for thrust in the back on this mini drift car is just set up with the forward of the wheels and the throttle. So if you go forward, it spins the prop. So you have thrust pushing you forward with the wheels. Couldn't get any simpler than that. That's a 2-channel remote, and everything's just set up to work with that and be simple. So after that would be a 3-channel remote. Okay, so same first channel with the throttle and braking and then steering left and right as your second channel. And here our third channel, we actually have set up for, you see these are servos. So normal steering servos, but they're actually connected to fins that serve an aerodynamic purpose. So just if the dual rate is down, for example, or in the digital controls the dual rate is down, the fins are both just straight for aerodynamic stability at high speeds. So zeroing out the dual rate for the third channel, it's just straight, and turning it up makes them turn to the left or right, and simply toggling the channel switch, it's a third channel toggle. So toggling it makes the fins flip from left to right. So that's pretty much how that works. It's, you know, you got to wrap your head around it a little bit, but it's really basic. So at high speeds, depending on whether they're going to the left or the right, it's just going to have a tendency to push these back wheels out one way or out the other way. And so going around a different sided turn, you could bring your wheels in more from fishtailing or push them out more for fishtailing. And why we're even playing around with that is because these thrust producers and EDFs, they push you around the corner in a different way, kind of more like a hovercraft. So yeah, so the actual control of the thrust is hardwired in my situation on the J1 and the J2, not in this guy's situation, but in the J1 and the J2 and the bigger cars, it's hardwired to the throttle. And I could get more complicated and tell you how EDFs are set up and the starting procedure, but I won't do that. Basically, full brake means my EDF is at 0 thrust and it's just off. That means the car is at full brake. And if I let go and the throttle rests at neutral, the EDF is actually at 50% and spooled up and pushing the car forward off the line already at neutral. Past neutral would begin to engage the wheels and then take the thrust higher than 50%, and then max throttle is 100% EDF and 100% wheel power. So it's more of a learning curve than your typical four-wheel drive setup that would just have neutral throttle, full brake / reverse, and then full throttle, right? And then the EDF only car would have, you could have it set up neutral throttle and reverse thrust with a setup that allowed it, and full reverse, or it could just simply look like this with 0 thrust being up at the full brake or down on something like this. So that's kind of how the EDF car could work, and then you would have to have braking on a separate channel if you basically had no thrust vectoring braking set up with the EDF itself. So I think basically a lot of these videos gonna have to just show other videos and talk through that. But basically you kind of got to get your head around how you'd want to learn and where you're gonna control from. Now they have controllers this style with more channels, but it's just how are you gonna hold it and toggle the switches and flip, and do you want to have a button there and be worried about doing that, or would you rather try to have something like this with different switches on it and toggles and work with something like this? Now this type of controller can control more channels easier. At least that's my opinion, and I think most people's opinion. You can control more channels freely, so things like helicopters and all kind of FPV cameras and FPV cars and things with more channels. They typically have controllers like this because I believe this is best for controlling a lot of channels. It's just you have to wrap your head around it. So in a car situation, for example, this could be your throttle forward and braking and into reverse, and that's just neutral. So you could say as you're taking off on the line, you give yourself some throttle but don't peel out too much. And then this could even be your steering to the left and steering to the right. So you take off from the line, you throttle up, not too much. You're peeling out, you throttle back some, you're trying to control your fishtail with left to right. You hit the corner, so you're braking and slowing down, maybe turning into the corner while braking, then throttling out of the corner while still turning, a little more, a little less. Maybe you're sliding out, so you gotta counter steer. And my brain has never been able to really race good with this kind of style of controller. Some people are really good with them. Maybe it's how you learn, maybe it's how our brains work a little different. I've been better with this style, and for most drivers, on-road, off-road, they stick to this style for the most part. So that's kind of the question, and when you're controlling an extra thing like an EDF, for example, is it worth going to something like this where you could have your EDF on its own channel? And this is just for your wheel power, but it's just an extra learning curve to have this, extra finger over here controlling the EDF how you want it. In certain scenarios, absolutely, the more controls is more power, but you have to be on top of that control in microseconds. You're up in the air, you got to throttle up to, get your car tilted right, and then you can give yourself full thrust to accelerate in the air, and then while playing with how much wheel acceleration or nose angle up you have or down with how much wheel acceleration and braking you're doing over here while you're blasting through the air, accelerating yourself. And then you're landing and then heading into a corner, so drop your thrust, get onto your braking, or even more complicated, you're throwing in extra channels for thrust vectoring, and this could be a toggle switch, say, for your thrust coming straight out of the back, or reverse your thrust for reverse thrust and braking, or this channel could be going left and right for thrust vectoring out of the back to go left or right like hovercrafts to help with turning around tight corners and things. It's just an extra step. So trying to get out of that, I think you guys get the gist of that. And so that's how you got to choose how your throttles and things are set up. The J2 is like that again, and just working with two channels for both thrust and wheel power, and that's just how that's going. And so here we have ground acceleration, and this is the ease of use. And I think the EDF only car is going to have the easiest time, and the thrust plus four-wheel drive car is going to be second, and normal four-wheel drive last, because if you're just heavy on your throttle here and punching it, you're going to spin out and get sideways, and then you got to let off the throttle and try to, or you're going to punch it, you're going to do a wheelie and flip over. And so the other cars, more so you punch it, they're more so going to stay in a straight line, so it's easier for the other cars. Now, jumping with no thrust vectoring, the normal four-wheel drive car is the easiest to jump. Secondly would be the four-wheel drive car plus EDF, and then last would be the EDF only car. And even jumping with thrust vectoring, it still would play out in the same order, I believe, with the EDF only car last, because you got to go off the jump, control your throttle, control your thrust vectoring with whatever toggles you're controlling that with, control your your thrust. It's gonna be difficult, I think. So I think it's still gonna be the hardest to jump the EDF only car, and the normal car, just with its more simple controls, is gonna be the easiest. So that's what's up with that. And so here we have a track one, and you just got three different track scenarios, and basically you have a really bumpy track with a lot of bumps, constant bumps, a lot of bumps to throw the car's kind of center of gravity off and throw the inertia off. And it's a lot of sharp turns right after each other and no long straightaways, so it's tight turns, lots of jumps. I believe a normal four-wheel drive car is just going to dominate on a course like that. It can accelerate and brake really fast, from on the gas, braking, to quick turns, this, that. Handling the bumps, you just kind of can be on the gas and just over the jumps, hitting your jumps, boom, boom, boom. It can more so absorb it and go back and forth the quickest, I believe. Now, on more of a dirt track, with bigger jumps, and so you have like a jump where it's set up where the thrust is the only way to push you over a jump that big, then your EDF four-wheel drive car will start to take the lead. And you have vertical slopes, or damn near vertical slopes, that the EDF only car and the car with thrust can do. The EDF plus four-wheel drive car is going to win. So you have a mix of some bumps and some long jumps, some crazy climbs. You're on dirt, so the traction isn't the best, and you kind of have some wide sweeping turns. You can drift a long straightaway, and you got a couple of tight turns thrown in there. I think the EDF four-wheel drive car is going to dominate. Now, if you're talking about an ice track and the jumping parts of the course, you have a tight U-turn where you don't have a lot of time to accelerate into a short jump, where you have to clear a huge gap going to this, you got to pull off this flight maneuver to take you higher. The EDF only car is going to dominate in that situation. And when you're talking about really long, wide, sweeping turns on ice that the EDF only car can drift, the EDF only car is going to start to be a real big contender. And so you don't have a lot of big bumps. You got long, wide, sweeping turns. EDF only car. And so last but not least here, it's just, if you're trying to do, say, a top speed run, right? Like 100 miles per hour plus, or 300 miles per hour, the four-wheel drive car only is more stable, pushing at high miles per hour, just due to how the thrust mechanics work, kind of, and how rockets work. For example, when the thrust is coming from behind you and pushing you forward, it has a tendency to want to push you and spin you out. So as you go over these bumps in the road at these high speeds, where your car's more unstable, the thrust coming from the back is actually a negative, and you have to have really good aerodynamics to counteract that. And that aerodynamics to hold you down is kind of more resistance in a way that's slowing you down. So in a way, efficiency wise, for sure, hands down, the normal four-wheel drive car wins. And being stable, accelerating at high speeds, the normal four-wheel drive car wins when things are equal. If the bodies and the aerodynamics are the same, the four-wheel drive car is just going to have an easier time. So that's why that's ahead. And down here it's showing the bumpier the road gets, the further the four-wheel drive car will get ahead of the regular EDF car. All right, so that's what's up with that. Down here on the bottom, on the incline, if this was a steep enough incline on a really long thing, then as you know, inclines start to favor the thrust again if the incline gets steep enough. So that's what's up with that.
Nice.